Yeah, I just returned from a conference in Jerusalem 2 weeks ago, or early October, hosted by the Israeli government for Christians who write about Israel. And indeed, our conference was in the Hotel Leonardo, amidst those hotels across the street from the the American colony in St. George Street, near Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood. And living there in Jerusalem for over 2 weeks, and both before and after the conference, in places like French Hill neighborhood up near the Hebrew University, and then later in the central sector near the Jaffa Street. Just every day walking across this now imaginary green line. I don't understand why you see Jerusalem is now divided or something. It seems that it's precisely after the Israelis were able to liberate East Jerusalem from Jordanian control in '67 that it's now grown into a unified city.
In my experience, in 10 years living in Musrara, so on the western side of the sea line, and Musrara is a very particular neighborhood that I describe in the first chapter of my book. There are invisible lines that divide Jerusalem. They are not so visible. And if I have to say, yes, in a way it's true. If we go to Malcha Mall, or if we go to Jaffa Street, if we go to Mamilla, if we go in Damascus Gate, outside Damascus Gate, in Palestinian Musrara to buy vegetables, for example, we see all the communities together. I mean, we see the Israelis and the Palestinians together for 1 hour, for half an hour, and then they go back to their gates, to their enclosed neighborhoods. French Hill is a different matter. French Hill was, and I underline was, an Israeli neighborhood after 1967. My sources tell me that now Palestinians are buying houses in French Hill, which is very strange, and we have also to think about this fact that the inhabitants of Jerusalem are perceiving the city as one, without no east and nor west, but we have also to understand the views from the two communities. What the Israelis are perceiving as one city, so the eternal and undisputable capital of Israel, and what the Palestinians are perceiving of Jerusalem as one city. When they go, for example, to the western part and they go to Talbieh, they think about their memories. They don't think about a new unified city. They think about the memories of their houses on the other side. If they go to the Mamilla cemetery in front of the Mamilla Mall, they think about their people buried under the tombs and near the so-called Tolerance Museum. I mean, I think we have to listen to both the narratives in Jerusalem, to understand what Jerusalem is for the inhabitants, for all the inhabitants.
Yes.
Is there within Jerusalem, is there a Christian Arab world? And if so, how does it impact on this division you're talking about?
Yes, there is, of course. The Palestinian Christians are in Jerusalem. Yeah, they are. There is a division between Bethlehem and Jerusalem. There is the war between Bethlehem and Jerusalem. So the Christian community, the Palestinian Christian community, is in Jerusalem, in Bethlehem, and in Ramallah. They are not so many. They are subdivided in 12 or 13 denominations. They have schools. They have their parishhood. I used to go to one of the parishhoods of the Latin parishhood of in the old city, the Saint Saviour Church near the Terra Santa. I used to live nearby the New Gate, outside the old city, and it's a vibrant and a very good community, not a very populous one, unfortunately, and they are very good merchants. They are professionals, pharmacists, architects.
Do they have power within this world?
But for example, I discovered that one of the architects who did the Mamilla Center is who worked with Moshe Safdie is a Palestinian. I think a Christian one. I'm not sure, but I think it's Christian one. I have to check, so I'm not sure.
Were you
But-
asking about political power?
Yes, I mean, it's sort of like when you say Al-Aqsa Mosque. Is, you know, that the Palestinian Christians were supportive, and I mean,
Yeah,
they can't go into the mosque.
it depends. I went to the mosque. I mean, and, I'm a Christian, so I went to the mosque. We have to go from another part, from the Mughrabi gate, not from the gates that the Muslim faithful use. But we can go.
And power.
But the power is a different matter of fact. If you ask me, do they have power inside the Palestinian community? That means inside the 100,000 inhabitants of Jerusalem. Yes, they have. Yes, they have. Not that much, but yes, they have. Of course, it's a negotiation. Power is a negotiation. If you ask me, in Jerusalem as a city, I mean, so as a city that Israeli authorities are running, I think yes, they have. Yes, they have too. But of course, it's a negotiation. They are not that many. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I wonder if you could clarify a bit some of the numbers that you put out, and also talk a little bit about the lines. I mean, the map that you had up there was quite useful with the green line and the seeing line.
Yeah, it's very complicated. I will. If you want, I will discuss. So,
Well,
numbers.
let me ask you, let me say, you said that, I believe in 47, was it the old city that had 900,000 people?
No. Now.
That's-
Now.
No.
It's now.
Now.
Well, you also said that Jerusalem is the largest city in Israel. It's larger than Tel Aviv.
In terms of inhabitants, yes, it's the most populous one.
So what is the population of Tel Aviv?
It depends, because Tel Aviv is Tel Aviv and the neighbors all around. So, for example, we can't describe Tel Aviv as a social and an economic
Can you
environment.
give us two numbers for central? Well, okay.
No,
we're
it's
thinking
but because how can you consider Tel Aviv without Rishon LeZion or Petah Tikva
Okay.
and Netanya? I mean, it's a
Fine,
it's
okay.
it's a very complicated mosaic of neighborhoods and Tel Aviv and Jaffa as the coastal part.
Okay. So
So there's a ring of extremely populated neighborhoods,
Thank
or
you.
neighborhoods, not only neighborhoods.
Thank you. And you said that now the population of Jerusalem is 900,000.
More or less.
Is that within the old city with the four corners? That's the greater Jerusalem
The
as
greater.
defined by the Israelis.
Not the greater Jerusalem, the municipal borders of Jerusalem, because the greater Jerusalem bill is still in the Knesset.
Right, I understand that.
So the 900,000 is the number inside the municipality of the borders of the municipality of
Going all the way up to
Jerusalem.
Bethlehem and so on.
I will show you the. No, this is the only basin.
Yeah, that's the best. Well, that was a good, okay, I understand what you're talking about. And could you also talk about the distinction between the green line and the seam line?
I mean, it's like in every ceasefire you have the two lines and the seam line in the middle, the no man's land.
Okay, that's.
So the no man's land in Jerusalem is really in the heart of the city, not in the heart of the holy city. Because,
Okay,
but it's in the heart of the old city. So if we are in the desert and we have the no man's land, yes, fine. I mean, the centimeters are meters and dozens of meters or hundreds of meters, but they are in a desert. If they are in a contested city, if they are like in Berlin also, what was the same thing, they mean houses, they mean lives before the war, they mean also constructions after. For example, the road number 1 is on the Green Line, not on all the Green Line, but in the heart of Jerusalem, the road number 1 is on the Green Line. But, for example, in near Damascus Gate, the road number 1 and the Sim Line erased part of a neighborhood, Musrara. Let us see if I have Musrara here. Yes, Musrara. So this is the situation nowadays. Musrara is that one. Musrara used to be up to the Damascus Gate. It was one of the first, probably the first neighborhood, modern neighborhood, middle-class neighborhood outside the old city. So they began to build Musrara after, in the last quarter of the 19th century. It was a mixed neighborhood with Palestinian, Muslim and Christian Palestinians and the Jewish citizens during the Ottoman period. And for example, this is the reason why for me it's difficult to think about East and West. The Valero family used to be a very important family during the Ottoman period, built near Damascus Gate. And the Palestinian and the Christian and Muslim Palestinians, they built on that side. And there are the families, Jakaman families' houses in the Musrara, in this part of Musrara, the Dajani. There are all the list is in the Salim Tamari's books, especially that one before 1948. So that part, the triangle here, is more or less the Sim Line. And now there is a road, and now there are shops, there are palms, there is the bus station. There used to be houses. These houses. So war, in terms of lines, war erased a part of the history. It happened in Jerusalem, it happened in Berlin, it happened everywhere. I mean, it's not a special case in history, but if we think about Jerusalem, this is the case. And regarding numbers, of course, we have the Palestinian statistics and in the Israeli statistics, and so I speak about the municipal borders of Jerusalem and the Israeli national statistics.
One final point on the number of Christians in Jerusalem.
Few thousand.
10, 20, 30.
No less.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate your description.
You
of
speaking,
the-
please.
I really appreciate your description of the geographical divisions in the city, and I'd love to ask you a little bit about the visual similarities as well. So, in my experiences going to the city, I think that sometimes the street signs, the bilingual street signs, can be a very clear indication of power or control over a certain area. So I was wondering if that has come up in your research and your studies of the divisions of the city, and whether or not that has reinforced or complemented your findings.
Yes, I wrote some pages on the street signs and also on the way, I mean, the different powers along history changed the names of the streets, for example. During the Ottoman Mandate, during the British Mandate, after 1948 and after 1967, streets changed their names, but also neighborhoods changed their names. For example, again, the case of Musrara. Musrara was the name shared by all communities when Musrara has been built at the end of 19th century. Now the name is Morasha, although I have to say that the Jerusalemites, they continue to call Musrara in the east and in the west, and they make a distinction between the Palestinian Musrara and the Israeli Musrara. And but the problem is that I don't have the slide, but Morasha became Morasha also in the Arabic transliteration. So it's not Morasha in Hebrew and in English and Musrara in Arabic, but became Morasha in all the three languages. Or, for example, near the Damascus Gate, we will have Yerushalayim. We will have Yerushalayim transliterated into Arabic, and beside Al-Quds in Arabic, and Jerusalem in English. So, yes, again, naming the streets, naming the names, means also how we see the city, how we see our rule of the city also. And Romans, they changed the name of Jerusalem in the very old times as Aelia Capitolina, so it's a very long history.
Yeah.
Jerusalem is still on my list. I haven't been there. Of course, I've followed quite a bit about the street. Some time ago, I read that book, The American Princess, and of course I have to reflect on that time, the Ottoman and Christians and the Jewish and what have you. But let's get back to your title, Jerusalem without God, and then the cruel city. This strikes me, and I can read between the lines. I really appreciate what you're talking about, the squares, and the social importance, past and now. But could you reflect a little more on the cruelty part? God,
Without God is not a provocation. Although I'm a secular, I not only I respect a lot the religious dimension of Jerusalem, but because I respect a lot the religious dimension of Jerusalem, and I'm a Catholic as education, I think that we tended in the last years to focus a lot on the sacred stones instead of focusing on the human beings. And in my experience, I saw a lot of pilgrims in the city from all the faiths. And what I saw is that the pilgrims were, of course, attracted by the sacred stones, but they didn't look at the people. And as a Catholic, I mean, as a secular Catholic, if I have to say that the gospel is there, you have to see the human beings and not the sacred stones in order to understand, if you are a believer, to understand the gospel message. For example, the Christian pilgrims, they ask me many times, but you know, there are the stations in the Via Dolorosa, but beside the station there was a shop. And they were selling olives or clothes, and I said, why not? I mean, the Via Dolorosa, if we are believers or not, but the Via Dolorosa also in the ancient times was in the market. So I mean, it's like the pilgrims, they want to see a museum, they want to hygienize the city or the Via Dolorosa instead of living their religious experience stuck in the real city. And of course, it's not only in Jerusalem; it's also in Rome, of course. The cruelty. I think that if a city is a contested one, if the social spaces speak about exclusiveness and not about coexistence, real, profound coexistence, not the coexistence I saw in the Malha Mall or in Jaffa Street. We have to speak about cruelty. It means, I think that the problem of Jerusalem, the core issue is recognition. Me and the other. We have to recognize each other as humans, and we don't have to dehumanize the other because we need to be more solid. If I can reach to express myself, we have to share what we can share, the common space, and the common space is humanity. And I didn't see that much in Jerusalem. I saw people walking on the same sidewalk, but they didn't watch each other in the eyes. And I think in that is the cruelty of Jerusalem.
I'm going on my 4th trip to Jerusalem in April, and over the course of the 10 years that I visited, I've just been so, I don't even know what the word is, sad to see the number of soldiers in the city. I mean, it's just remarkable to me. There's soldiers every street corner, Uzis across their chests. And you don't see that in American cities as much, so it stands out. And it breaks my heart, but I guess it's history.
Yes, it's history. We can speak about security, but what I think that if we have to base our life on security, it means we are lacking something, also in political terms. So we don't reach to create a peaceful or normalized environment. And if it is the case of Jerusalem, because it is the case of Jerusalem, I think it's our duty also as analysts to pose questions and ask why there are so many soldiers. I mean, if really Jerusalem is unified and is peaceful and normalized as the city, why we need soldiers? Of course we need for security. I mean, it's the same all over the world, but we have to interrogate ourselves if there are other ways, if we made mistakes in the way. I mean, we as, when I say we, I don't say me, us, but I say the people of Jerusalem, the authorities in Jerusalem from both sides, if there were mistakes in these long decades. But I think that the first mistakes that explain a lot is the lack of recognition of the other.
Now, I'm just going to end this with an anecdote. Anecdotes are very narrow. I've been going to Jerusalem on a number of occasions. And what has struck me is increasingly you find a situation where, for example, if you're outside the King David Hotel and you go to get a taxi cab, and you want to go to the other side, the taxi cab driver will say, not only I'm not going there for security reasons, the taxi driver will say, I've never been there. You know what I mean? In other words, that an even better anecdote, I was involved or privileged to take a group to be, whatever it is, an expert on a group of CEOs who were going throughout a good part of the Middle East, that area. What struck me was when it came to seeing Jerusalem, when you were on one side, you had 2 Israeli Jewish guides. When you were on the other side, you had 2 Palestinian guides. But what was interesting was the extent to which, and these were very bright, nice people, the extent to which you had that separation, but you also had that separation in the way in which they talked about the history. There was that, there was a kind of, in fact, it was more talking about us than about them, kind of absence of them on both sides. And I think you see that more, more and more. Well, unfortunately, we have another class coming in, so we have to end this, but I really want to thank you for today.
Thank you. Thank you.